no, I'm trying to say, there's an expression, roll with the punches and go, just. Hey everybody, Deathblade here with another Chinese fantasy novel FAQ. This one's going to be pretty short. Before I get started, I want to say thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon. This video topic was actually voted by sponsors on Patreon, and I do have another vote up right now as of the release of this video to vote on the subject of the next upcoming video. So if you're interested in that, please go down to the description below, click through to Patreon. Okay, today I'm talking about something that I have actually seen brought up many times, and that is, why are the immortals in Chinese fantasy novels not actually immortal? And there's actually basically one reason in my opinion about this. Well, two. Let's go to the second reason first, that's context. We're going to get to the first reason, which is etymology, in a second. Basically, in terms of context, for those of you who maybe have not read a lot of these fantasy novels, long story short is the immortals that appear in the novels, like I mentioned, they can actually die. And usually that rank or level of being an immortal is kind of low on the list of the overall ranks or levels that the cultivators can achieve. In fact, a lot of times it's one of the very low levels when you consider the overarching cultivation system in the novel. And so basically, one of the explanations for why the immortals are not immortal is because they're just not. That's not how they usually are viewed in the novels. They sometimes will die from being killed in combat, sometimes they have a set longevity, and when they reach the end of that, they die, I guess you could say, of natural causes. Sometimes it describes them as passing away in meditation or something. So that's the weaker of the two explanations of why the immortals are not immortal. The more relevant explanation has to do with the etymology of the Chinese characters and the etymology of the two English terms. So first of all, looking at the English terms mortal and immortal, the very definitions of those words have to do with being able to die or not die. So mortal beings are beings who can die, and immortal means not mortal, and the definition is about people who live forever or maybe cannot die. So I did a whole video on the actual definition of the word immortal as it relates to other similar creatures or beings in Chinese fantasy novels, which you can check out here. But talking about the actual Chinese characters for immortal, it's usually Xian or Xianren, and then mortal is Fanren. And looking at those two, the actual definitions of the Chinese characters there aren't having anything to do with death. So the definition of immortal in Chinese, it does actually usually have to do with beings that have eternal life of some sort, but it doesn't necessarily imply that they cannot die. Fanren, mortal, just actually means like a common ordinary person. That's usually the word for mortal in the Chinese fantasy novels. And so what I'm trying to say is that although in English it's kind of confusing because you have immortals who are actually not immortal, in Chinese it's not really confusing to say that a xianren can die. So in terms of the etymology in English, I thought of a good example, and we're going to take Hulk from the Marvel Universe. Now let's say, just go out on a limb with me here. That's not the right expression. So I thought of a good analogy in English that kind of conveys the same way that the etymology of the character can affect how it's perceived by somebody in another language. So let's take Hulk from the Marvel Universe. Now just go along with this with me for a little bit. Imagine that you're writing a fantasy novel based on the Hulk, and the premise of your novel is that he goes to a planet that is filled with creatures that are called Hulks, and he's actually just one of many Hulks. And as it turns out, the gray Hulk, so as you know, there's different colors of the Hulk. He's usually green, but there's the gray version. Let's say that the gray version of the Hulk is actually what all Hulks are like, and he's just kind of unusual because he's green. So he goes to this planet that's full of gray Hulks, and the whole premise of the story is about this civilization of gray Hulks. Well, guess what? In Chinese, the way to say Hulk literally is green giant. So if you have this novel transported over into Chinese, and you had a whole race of people called the Green Giants, except they weren't green, they were actually gray, it would be like really weird. But in English it wouldn't be weird at all, because the actual term Hulk doesn't have anything to do with this color. So similarly, the word immortal in Chinese doesn't really have anything to do with living or dying. It's more just describing a sort of superpower, transcendent, enlightened individual. And obviously, as I've said in many videos before, the authors can do whatever they want with the terms and the mythology and kind of twist it in their own way. And in the novels, usually those immortals are actually not super powerful and they can die. So again, this is kind of a short video. I have seen this subject come up many times in comment sections, and so I figured it would be good to address it and have it here on the channel. If you like this content, please do like and subscribe. You can support directly on Patreon or through PayPal or whatever. Thank you very much to everyone who has been supporting me over the past weeks and months and years. So that's it for this video. I'll see you next time. God's love.